morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Robert Mukore. Welcome to this program. The social media has been a buzz. The young man we see in the picture there is the president-elect of Senegal. And many Zimbabweans have applauded his election as youth, change of youth, and he has been in prison and so forth. I think to concentrate on those points is to miss the point completely. You have to listen to him to realize that there is somebody who has a vision. At least the vision he is presenting here is well articulated and is very clear. He wants to end French control of his former colonies. And he has articulated it really well. I'll just play a part of it so you can listen to it for yourself.
It is high time for France to lift its knee off our neck and put an end to this unjust oppression. Centuries of misery, human trafficking, colonization, and neocolonization have caused immeasurable suffering. It's time to put an end to this cycle of oppression. It's high time for France to leave us alone. It's time for France to take a cue from its European neighbors and learn a valuable lesson in independence. Germany is the leading economic power in Europe, significantly surpassing France, which is ranked as the third or fourth largest economic power globally. Germany does not exploit any country, any colony. I can mention Italy, I can mention Spain, who had colonies before, but who do not exploit anyone, who do not interfere, who do not impose leaders in their former colonies. On what grounds does France believe it can continue to impose leaders on us and make choices on our behalf? This must come to an end. And the emerging Africa, the African youth, the African elites, and the African diaspora all stand united in saying, no, it cannot continue any longer. France's hypocrisy is evident and pervasive in daily life. Let's examine the cases of Mali and Chad as prime examples of this hypocrisy. In Chad, where the constitutional process has been interrupted, France applauded and its president visited to officially consecrate the new king's coronation ceremony. In Mali, where it is not the constitutional process that has been interrupted, but the transition process, France has condemned and even packed up its things to say that it is leaving Mali. That's hypocrisy. It's the double standard. It is the double language that France employs in its dealings with Africa. During our questioning of Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian regarding the situation in Ivory Coast and France's decision to allow a third term, he provided a clear explanation. He stated that while he accepted the third term for Ouattara, he refuses it for Belarus. He emphasized that France has condemned the situation in Belarus and has actively encouraged the European Union to do the same. Le Drian explains that in Belarus, millions protested, unlike Ivory Coast, where there were no mass demonstrations on the streets. This is how France deals with African issues. Personally, we expect absolutely nothing from France. We desire her to cease meddling in our matters so that the people of Senegal can exercise their freedom of choice rather than being influenced by France's selection of a candidate using the tactics we are aware of. We begin by targeting individuals, adorning them with the Legion of Honor or a similar knightly rank, enlisting them in Masonic lodges, and informing them to prepare themselves as they will be next in line. Even the hypothesis that Macky Sall may not succeed, we know who is being prepared by France. This must come to an end. It will not occur in this manner any longer. Let's be clear. We have absolutely nothing against the French people. In France, both political and citizen voices are rising to hold and express the same discourse as the one I'm currently presenting to you. For example, the deputies, such as Mrs. Frédérique Dumas, who regularly speaks on the platform of the Assembly, who regularly writes to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, since she is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, to raise this unfair behavior of France towards Africa.
I will not play to the end, but I think you get the gist of it. Here is somebody who is articulating on an issue and is clear what he wants to achieve. This has been noticeably lacking with our Zimbabwean leaders. While we were fighting for independence, for example, Robert Mugabe and his colleagues articulated on one man, one vote, freedom for all. Meanwhile, as we were progressing towards independence, Robert Mugabe and company were already plotting on how they are going to impose a one-party state. One man, one vote in one-party state are incompatible. There is a leader who just used the current rhetoric, independence, freedom, and so forth, to achieve his main objective was that they should be in power. And ever since independence, Zanu PF's attitude has been very clear. They have the right to rule Zimbabwe. They fought to end white colonial rule, and therefore then that gives them the divine right to rule. Zimbabwe has never held free, fair, and credible elections. And it stems from that. Here is a group of individuals who had absolutely no vision other than they wanted absolute power for themselves. And once they got into power, they started creating an environment to perpetuate their iron grip on power. Nothing else. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. If you look just across the border in South Africa, ANC at least produced the Freedom Charter, which was a document where you can see they seriously thought about what does freedom mean? What does independence mean? And in it, they articulated the rights of all South Africans, the right to a meaningful vote, etc., etc. Zanu PF never had any such document. They never had that vision. The same is applied to our opposition. I know some of the social media has been abuzz regarding this very issue that the president-elect of Senegal is 44 years old, youthful, and he has been in prison. And those Chamisa supporters have been very quick to point out that their man has also been in prison and has also been beaten up and so forth. While I condemn the barbarism of Zanu PF, because the imprisonment and ill treatment of individuals that we witnessed during the fight for independence should not be happening again. This was posted by some of Chamisa's supporters, proving that he has been in the trench. This has got to be condemned. This should not be happening in independent Zimbabwe. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we cannot deny that it's still happening to this day. The barbarism has not stopped. So one has got to go back to the time when MDC was launched. What was their vision? The party itself said they were a movement for democratic change. But in all the last 23 years, I have yet to hear one MDC-CCC member articulate what that democratic change is. Just one. Clearly, here are individuals who clearly had no vision. All they wanted is to use the public discontent with the Zanu PF regime to help propel them into positions of power, to get them elected into positions of power, so they could now negotiate with Zanu PF. And negotiate they did. Because during the GNU, anyone who has been following the politics of Zimbabwe will tell you that was the golden opportunity for Zimbabwe to implement the democratic reforms and end the Zanu PF dictatorship. But alas, not even one token reform was implemented in those 5 years. Not one. Why? Well, Mugabe bribed Mugabe and Tsvangirai, Tendai Biti, Nelson Chamisa, and all the MDC leaders with the usual ministerial cars, limousines, generous salaries and allowances, and so forth. And our friends forgot about the reforms. They completely forgot. In fact, I think it is being kind to them to say they forgot, because I don't think they even understood what the reforms were. Maybe except for one or two. The rest of them clearly had no idea what the reforms are. All they cared about is, this is our opportunity to get onto the gravy train. And they were willing to articulate on, we are going to deliver change, without saying what that change is. Last year, even after being warned that if you participate in these flawed elections, you only give Zanu PF legitimacy, the MDC leaders were absolutely hell-bent on participating, because they realized that Zanu PF is now willing, ever since the GNU, is now willing to share some of the benefits of being in power with whoever gives them political legitimacy. And that is where we are today. As much as people would want to believe that Nelson Chamisa and company will deliver change, the truth of the matter is they have no idea. They have absolutely none. If they fail to deliver even 1 minute token reform during the GNU, when they had the golden opportunity to do so, I think it is naive to think they'll do so now. Now, when Zanu PF controls all the trump cards. Zanu PF is not going to give up power. It has got to be coerced into that position. And the best opportunity that the country had to do that was during the GNU. And MDC compromised on that. They failed to implement the reforms. And right now, what we are looking at now is a causal relationship between Zanu PF and the opposition. Everyone active in the opposition right now, they know that as long as you participate in the election and give Zanu PF legitimacy, you'll be rewarded with a few gravy train seats. And the trick is to con the ordinary Zimbabweans into believing that participating would deliver the change they want. And so the opposition has become more like Zanu PF's hunting dogs. They need to persuade the ordinary Zimbabweans to participate in these flawed elections. And so far, they've done it successfully. Again, in 2013, 2018, and last year, 2023. And Zanu PF is looking at them doing it again in 2028. And at the present moment, given the sheer ignorance of the Zimbabwe electorate, I think it will have to be somebody who is really brave to say that is not going to happen. Because we still have the same naive, ignorant, and gullible electorate who are willing to believe whatever the opposition tells them. What we should be looking at in terms of leadership is leadership who have got a vision. It doesn't matter how old they are or how young they are. Age has nothing to do with it. It's the vision. What is it you want? You're promising to change here. Zanu PF and MDC have been very good at presenting no vision at all, just present the usual empty promises, rhetoric, which at the end of the day are quickly forgotten with their promises broken in pursuit of power and the wealth for Zanu PF. And for the opposition, in pursuit of the few gravy train seats, Zanu PF is offering us a reward for participating. That is not a vision. And we should not be naive to be conned into participating in these flawed elections again and again. We have had 43 years now of rigged elections. In this day and age, MDC were elected primarily to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. They never articulated that vision, how they were going to do it. And indeed, they've never spoken at any of the rallies, as far as I know, of how they were going to deliver one change, even just one. That is where we are. The promise last year by Chamisa that Triple C is going to win big because he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes is an outrage. How anyone at all could be conned into believing such nonsense is unbelievable. But people did. They participated in an election process that was so flawed that at the end of the day, the regional body, SADC, the continental body, AU, and even Zimbabwe's own Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission condemned the process as flawed. They participated. And even after these three bodies had condemned the election, The MDC leaders still went ahead and took their graviton seats. And that's endorsing that the process has been free, fair, and credible. The only way we're going to stop this madness is for the people themselves to realize, wake up to the reality that this is not working. This is just a circus. This is insane. We should stop following leaders who have absolutely no vision. All they want is power and absolute power for themselves. It is laughable that only last week, Mnangagwa at the Dakar in Senegal, in fact, was talking of his vision. Zimbabwe must be ruled by Zimbabweans. Here is an individual who has just rigged elections. So who are the individuals is he talking about? This is not the first time he has rigged elections. But at least this time, even the continental body had condemned those elections as flawed. The regional body had condemned those elections as flawed. And still he maintains that Zimbabwe must be ruled by Zimbabweans. Clearly, the man has no vision. None. And all his promises that at that Dakar meeting, he was promising that Zimbabwe next year will start producing enough grain for its own people and even some for export. I think many Zimbabweans out there have had such similar promises and none have been delivered. In fact, those empty promises that go back to the Mugabe days of Gutsaro Shinji, mass prosperity. And yet what we have in Zimbabwe is mass poverty. But you can never hold those guys to account because they're able to rig elections and impose their will on the country. The number one issue for Zimbabwe today is the same issue that people were fighting for before independence: freedom, liberty, justice. All encapsulated mostly in the people must have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That is the vision that anyone who aspires to lead Zimbabwe should articulate how they are going to deliver it. And at the present moment, Zanu PF clearly has no intention of giving the ordinary people the right to a meaningful vote. And as for the opposition, only the real naive and gullible would believe Chamisa's foolish claims that he has got these winning and rigged election strategies. Last time it was, I've plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes. In 2018, it was, the MDC alliance has stringent measures to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, which all came to nothing. I think that is what the people of Zimbabwe need to concentrate on. And it is not the youth or the fact that he has been in prison, that the Senegalese president has made such an impact. I think it's because he has got, at least on the issue of getting France out of Africa, he has got a vision and he has articulated it. And if he does the same thing in other areas, Senegal could be turning a page. And with it, maybe the rest of Africa may be able to turn a page too. Because I don't see how somebody like that would ever accept Mnangagwa's idiotic claim that Zimbabwe must be ruled by Zimbabweans and yet go ahead and blatantly rig elections, such that the continental body itself said those elections were flawed. How can it be that even now we don't even know what free, fair, and credible elections are? And how can somebody who doesn't even know what free, fair, and credible elections are be president? It's absurd. And the opposition has been playing its role in helping Zanu PF rig the elections and get legitimacy. It's absurd that we should be solidly behind such a corrupt and incompetent opposition. I think it is high time the people of Zimbabwe really woke up and understand what is going on, because only then can we really have meaningful change in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has got enormous potential, but right now, that potential is becoming a curse. Because if there's anything that has fueled Zanu PF greed, is the nation's wealth. Towards the end of that video, and I strongly recommend that if you've got a chance, you should listen to it, by the president-elect of Senegal. He was talking of, we don't want the Chinese or Russians in Africa. We want Africans to really sit down and start making their own decisions and mapping out their destiny. Because those outsiders have only come in to serve their own interests. And after all the rhetoric, Zanu PF about the British colonizers, the day after we have declared our independence in Zimbabwe, they were letting in the Chinese through the back door. And since the Chinese have taken over now, and holding free, fair, and credible elections is not in the Chinese interest, nor is it in the interest of Russia to see that happen in Zimbabwe. And they're willing to bankroll Zanu PF to rig elections. That is the kind of naivety that we are facing here in Africa. At least in Zimbabwe. We really need to wake up. I think I will say it one more time. I think the challenge for Zimbabwe is to implement the democratic reforms so that every Zimbabwean has a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And no one, absolutely no one, should be above the law. The fact that we are still failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections 43 years after independence in this day and age is an outrage. And I think people of Zimbabwe should wake up to that reality. MDC had the opportunity to implement the reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. They sold out. That is a reality. We need to deal with it. I don't know. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.